On the agenda today, we have items of interest from commissioners. That'll be followed by the director's report. On the consent agenda, we have consideration of the minutes from November 13th, 2018 PSC meetings. That will then be followed by a Better Housing by Design work session. And I want to make sure, so I want to put this little idea in your heads that we do disclosures before that work session begins on any conversations that we have had with the public since testimony was received. And then our goal is to adjourn at 7. So items of interest. Let's go Chris and then Mike. And I didn't see any hands around here, but we'll see.
So shortly before the holiday, we had a meeting of our Southwest Corridor subcommittee. The issues we talked about include the funding for the housing strategy, and one of the first opportunities that have been identified was the fall budget bump for the city. One of our recommendations was to fund basically the capture, supporting nonprofits that could capture the existing naturally occurring affordable housing, and we encourage the city to fund that early. There apparently were not significant dollars available in the fall budget bump, so that did not happen, but we need to stay on that. And then we talked a little bit about the priorities for the station area planning, which will be one of our tasks. And the current focus proposed is the West Portland Town Center, and then the changes around the Ross Island Bridgehead, which will now be part of this project as they untangle those streets. That begs the question, well, what about all the other stations? And the question of when we'll have staff and dollar resources to be able to do that planning, but those seem like the two biggest opportunities for change, so that's the current program. And we probably also want to give some consideration to adding new members to the committee. Of the 4 original members, one is now off the commission, one will go off later this spring, so it'll be down to Ben and I. So if anybody's interested in joining us, I suspect we have some room for Kat to appoint new members.
Thank you, Chris. Mike?
Yeah, I just came in from another meeting of the Broadway Corridor Steering Committee. And I'll just mention there's an open house tomorrow night from 5:30 to 7:30. I don't have the location. I plan on being there, but so if you go on Prosper Portland, you can certainly get the location. And it's a pretty fascinating process, and we're at the point now where there's a concept design that touches on all of the issues that we deal with here at the Commission. We will not be seeing, we will not be considering that project. The Design Commission will, but we certainly, I think, have a significant number of interests in what comes out of that process. It's been going on, I've lost track, over a year now. Pretty interesting group of folks providing input, and I think there's some good stuff coming out of it as of tonight.
Would it make sense for us to get a briefing, even if don't have a formal decision making?
Well, I wondered about that myself at one point. I would vouch for that, but depends on our schedule.
We can talk about that. Okay. Any other items of interest? Not seeing any. Joe, you're up. Director's report.
You know, that just heads up that there's one meeting left this calendar year, December 11th. We'll be working on Better Housing by Design again, and it's where we're going to bring the residential infill project economic report to the Commission for a briefing. That's it.
Thank you very much. Consent agenda.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Follow up, Joe. Can you remind me or tell me where we're at with RIP in terms of when it's coming back to us? Or are you still working on code language and kind of just sort of a scheduling?
Yeah, it's just in the
snapshot?
first. It's off the top of my head, Jeff. I don't know the exact timing. I guess I have the tentative agendas open.
Generally, if I don't need specific dates for my calendar, I just sort of want a sense of.
We're back to you in February, and here's the pieces of work that are going on now. Is that we have completed the plan. We're working on the code, and that's actually chugging along fine. The level of changes that the PSC made from where we started to where we ended were big for the transportation analysis in particular. So it's complicated that, and that's part of what's taking time, is to get in the queue and to get the we have to do the buildable lands inventory and forecast where the growth is going to go and get it in the model. A big part of that hang up has been on our side, not having the bandwidth to get the BLI, the buildable lands inventory, updated. So we're responsible for part of that delay. But we are getting through the commission in the first quarter of 2019, and then on to city council by summer.
I guess so staff's working on a code, or are we going to see draft language, and then because I was never clear whether we've I thought we were not quite done from the commission level, that we kind of, at least I want to sort of see all the pieces, see the code language.
Yeah, we're publishing a new code, a draft of the code that incorporates all of your changes, and we'll give you a crosswalk through that so you can track it. We're hoping that there's not big changes so that we can keep moving forward, but it does. It will be a compilation of all the pieces in one sort of clean version of the code, and that's, I think, being published early in January.
So you're correct, Jeff. We have not voted.
Right.
Right.
And there's certainly going to be further discussions on what comes back.
Right. We wanted to make sure that we could make transportation findings, and then you are ready to not merely make sure that the code aligns with the recommendations and the direction you gave us, but that we have a path where we can be more confident we can keep moving through City Council. We thought those, the economics question you put on the table, you wanted us to come back and brief you on. We've got that one done. Transportation will be the second piece. Those are the two critical findings for this thing. And you'll see the whole package and vote on it before we send it forward, excuse me.
I would hope we're not scheduling the vote the same hearing we get the package and discuss the package. I would think we'd want time to.
Yeah, it looks like
I have the pressure of feeling we got to vote tonight, which would sort of intimidate people from maybe suggesting a change. So I think it would be helpful to, after all this time, to not feel rushed at the final hearing. So I would hope we'd have a hearing where we could discuss possible changes could be discussed and then come back subsequently. I may not.
We were not planning on another hearing. We have
Okay.
a briefing. This is consolidating the changes that the PSC has made. We have a work session and recommendation scheduled for, looks like March 12th. And we have a briefing scheduled for February 12th. So those are two shots.
So there'll be
at
two
this.
shots. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other items? No? Next item is the consent agenda, consideration of the minutes from November 13th. Do I have a motion?
Move adoption.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Nope. That passes. So next item is our Better Housing by Design work session. So I'd like to start with, are there any disclosures that people would like to share?
Can you describe again what anyone who's talked to us about this project since when, or?
Well, since we had testimony,
Right.
if you've had conversations with the public regarding the project, which is completely fine, I think it's just we owe it to the public to let them know that you've had discussion. So, for example, I would like to disclose that I've received emails from Doug, and anyway, I guess just leave it at that at this point. But so if there's other discussions, I think we're just trying to be transparent about who you've been talking with, and make sure that public knows about that.
Okay. Well, in that vein, I've been contacted by Doug as well, and with suggestions for things that for possible changes. And I've been contacted by dozens and dozens of people, probably about what are the rules going to be in this code update, and not any particular lobbying me to do anything, but just people in the development community are curious about this code update and the residential infill as well, and they're just trying to find out what to expect and when to expect it. So that's it.
Doug gets around. I also have an email from him.
I am likewise on Doug's email list.
Okay, any other disclosures? None, thank you. So with that, if we could move forward.
Hello, I'm Bill Cunningham, Project Manager with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability on our update to the Multi-Dwelling Zoning Code. Back for our fourth work session on the proposals. And fourth work session, we're really beginning to dive into details. So we've definitely gone beyond some of the big concepts and really getting into the details related to our proposals for regulations related to a building and site design. And I just, before we launch into it, just wanted to give you a heads up as to what are the main topics of discussion. One of the topics is the proposed regulations limiting parking in front of buildings. One note, however, is that what we'll be discussing is primarily in relationship to multi-dwelling buildings. On December 11th, we'll be discussing some front garage issues where there's an overlap between BHD and RIP. So there'll be an opportunity to discuss garage limitations as they relate to things like attached houses, duplexes, townhouses. The second item is about side setbacks along corridors, and we also have an opportunity to discuss some of our proposals for height step downs to provide greater clarity related to step downs, both in the mixed use zones and the multi-dwelling zones to lower scale zones. Third item is about front setbacks. Fourth item is about accessory structures and setbacks. The fifth item is about our pedestrian standards, and sixth is about ground floor window requirements for commercial uses. Unless there are questions, I'll launch right into the first one.
Go ahead. Thanks,
okay. The first topic one, is about parking in front of buildings. Again, this is really about multi-dwelling type development. And what is proposed in the proposed draft is to disallow vehicle areas, including parking and driveways, from being located between a building and any street. I should mention that this is provides continuity with the regulations that apply in the mixed-use zones, which also disallow vehicle areas between buildings and streets. We also have an option to modify it somewhat to keep the limitation for parking in front of buildings on small sites, but on large sites provide some additional flexibility for buildings that are set well behind parking far from the street. And I'll have some slides that are explaining that in greater detail. Just to ground us in policy, a number of our policies and our design guidelines really emphasize the importance of having especially higher density development contribute towards pedestrian-friendly street environments. So we have a lot of policies that discourage having parking areas aligning the streets and really encourage more of a street orientation with the buildings. This slide is contrasting our current regulations to what is now proposed. Current regulations limit front parking to 50% of the frontage. However, within that 50% of the frontage, parking is allowed in front of buildings. There's some interest in the community in trying to limit some of those front parking arrangements, such as what we have in the above images. The image on the right is actually a fourplex with a parking that is well within the 50% maximum limit. And the proposed regulations would further limit front parking to being no more than 40% of the width of the frontage, and then also not allowing parking between the street and the building. It could be to the side of a building, but you couldn't set buildings behind it. One issue that was brought up by Commissioner Spivak was about some issues, especially for larger sites. One thing I should also mention is that while 50% currently of the frontage and is proposed 40% of the frontage could be parking, there's always a requirement that they be screened, the parking areas be screened by landscaping from the sidewalk. There's usually a 5-foot buffer strip that's required. But one issue brought up was in large sites, you often have situations where some buildings are set well behind a parking area, and visually there's not much of a difference between a parking area with nothing behind it versus a parking area with some building behind it. And the option we have for two is to continue to try to prevent on small sites the front parking arrangements in front of buildings, but on large sites providing some flexibility where there's not much visibility from the street for buildings to be set behind that 40% of frontage area that's allowed to be parking. This is another example showing a situation where you do have buildings behind parking on a larger site. The 100-foot distance was really chosen in relationship to a common configuration you have. Inner neighborhoods, usually the sites are no more than 100 feet deep. It tends to be only southwest or eastern neighborhoods where you have sites much deeper than 100 feet. But this would provide flexibility for some portions of buildings to be behind parking when they are set back further. Open to questions, but just circling back to the basic options we have here, and of course, feel free to present other options. But one, again, is keeping to the proposal. It's not allowing vehicle areas between a building and a street. Number two is keeping that disallowance for small sites, but on large sites, allowing some buildings to be set behind the parking when at least 100 feet from the street frontage.
Bill, I have a question, and then
Sure.
Eli. So, on the option 2, when you're allowing some buildings to be set behind the parking, would you regulate like how wide that area is that you have the parking and that building set behind?
Yes.
Okay.
We have two kinds of limitations. One limitation is that parking, at any rate, can't be more than 40% of the width of the frontage. So as the regulation stood, you could have parking to the side, but your buildings would generally have to be up closer to the street. And number two would allow for that 40% of the width of the site that's allowed to be parking, allowing the buildings to be set behind the parking for just that 40% of the width of the site.
Okay. Eli, I saw your hand up.
Oh, thanks, Bill, for working through options on this. I'll toss out a third option, which is to, it's not unexpected, is to provide this limitation on 10,000 square foot sites or less, but on larger sites, rely on other ways of protecting visual impacts of parking. And looking at some of the examples you shared, once you have a big, deep site, whether you have this one parking row which goes all the way to the back, which would be allowed under this proposal, or you have a parking row which goes a ways back, but there's a building back there, I'm not sure which one's better or worse. I'd actually maybe rather have a building to anchor your view corridor rather than going parking all the way back. So my inclination, so I guess my proposal would be to do a hybrid of these, where from option 1, we use that minor amendment, so you could put like a garbage structure or some non-residents behind a parking space, and just make this whole clause apply just to smaller sites, where I agree that we should not allow parking, we should on 100-foot deep sites, we don't want to have a model where you have a lot of parking all in front of every building. I can see why we have this in there. But I think for big, large sites, I don't, once you get back off the site a ways, I don't think it matters much whether there's buildings back there, and it makes awkward impacts on layouts.
I'm not sure I'm following exactly what you're proposing there. So,
is it
I hear you're supporting option 1 for small sites, but something different for large sites. Is that what I'm?
I'm saying for large sites, I'm not sure why what's the problem being solved by the over 100 foot? If you have a large site, what's the problem being solved? I guess that's the question.
The idea was to provide some flexibility. Well, generally we don't want buildings set behind parking. Mm-hmm. The intent was to allow some flexibility on these very large sites in areas of the site where there's not much of a visual presence from the street. Mm-hmm. Another way of framing a third option could be just to only apply, don't have that 100-foot threshold, just rely on the 40% parking limitation for large sites, and be silent as to whether or not a building is behind that 40% portion of the frontage. So it could be the disallowance for parking between a building and a street could apply only to the small sites, and large sites could be dependent just on the 40% frontage limitation.
I like that. So you're relying on the other piece of the code to deal with large sites, the 40% cap.
Not the 100 feet back.
Right.
In terms of
So just to think that scenario through, you're saying if 40% and you want to put a building at 50 feet back, you can. If you want to put it at 25 feet back, you can. I mean, in other words, it doesn't really matter. You're just talking about 40%. Is that where y'all got? Yeah, that. I'm seeing a lot of heads. Okay. Go ahead, Ben.
Just a clarification on the 40%. We're talking about not just the curb cut, but the average width of the parking lot, no matter where it's located. So it could be set back quite a while, but we're talking about that being the 40%, or is it just actually what is at the right-of-way line?
It's taking the whole property frontage. So if you had 100 feet of frontage, the limitation would be no more than 40% of the frontage, or 40 feet width of the frontage could be parking, which includes the driveway and any surface parking. So the rest, the 60%, would have to be landscaping or building. This building here, it's probably actually at about a 40% thing, but as you can see, the parking is definitely between the building and the street.
So looking at that, it's hard to know for sure, but let's just go with me for a second here. Where the concrete drive aisle is, let's say that's the 40%. Does the concrete paver walkway, which I could easily put a car on, by the way, count to the 40%? Like, it seems like there's certainly ways to play with this, is what I'm getting at.
It applies to any vehicle area, regardless of material.
Right, but what I'm getting at is, well, I would not call that a vehicle area. I'd call that a pedestrian, like a pathway to my house, but it's looks pretty wide, and I could probably put a car on it.
Well, I think it's this. You're right, is a pedestrian area. So what would be counted as that 40% limit for vehicle area would be just the parking areas. It does not apply to other types of like pedestrian connections. One thing I should mention too is these no parking between the building and the street. It used to be for our old CS zone that parking was prohibited between the building and the street. And with the mixed-use zones, when they expanded that applicability to more zones, they had a bit of a compromise where they changed it from prohibited to not allowed, so that developments could seek an adjustment if for some reason they had to get the parking in there, and they had ways of mitigating it. So it is very intentional that the parking is not allowed in front of buildings, but there's room for adjustments.
Totally following. I'm just trying to stop what I think might be going on in this example. Is there some way to say there needs to be a landscape buffer between the pedestrian pathway and the driveway so that the pedestrian pathway doesn't become a driveway, as I think it probably is in this example? Something to think about.
Definitely a judgment call. There's more code complexity there, but yes.
we would have to check with BDS to see how they would count that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it, I'm like, I'm not sure the exact way to solve it, but clever way to add a parking spot there. Jeff?
That's a question from a policy standpoint. When you're talking about trying to enhance the pedestrian environment, is it the pedestrians walking to the front door, or is it passing on the street, or both?
It's mainly passing along the street and the number of curb cuts you're encountering, and are you walking next to a parking lot or a front yard, landscaping, buildings, and that's perceived to be a friendlier
right, I can see that.
environment than 5 cars parked in front of a building.
So what would this go back to the one we've been looking at, the fourplex? Is that a 5,000 square foot lot, or do you know?
I think it's about a 5,000 square foot.
One of you smart developers or designers. So what do? Do you have to build a driveway along the side? I mean, assuming you want your off-street parking?
You could have, for a fourplex, a driveway as narrow as 10 feet going to rear parking, or we had also decided for small sites up to 10,000 square feet, there would be no off-street parking. So there's option to not provide off-street parking.
But assume you're in a part of town where this is the marketplace. I assume this is not in the inner city. That's your option. Are we talking about an expensive fix? We want to put parking. Does you have a driveway? What is it? Have to move the building over? I mean, what would you do with that site where you felt the market really needed some off-street parking?
I'm guessing you would make a narrower building
Yeah.
so that you can fit parking along the side of the building.
I would almost suggest that you hold that question for next meeting, because especially that example up there on the right really gets at the crux and the overlap between RIP and this project, and especially when we're looking at townhouses and duplexes and where you put that parking.
That's fine. I mean, I didn't have an outcome in mind. I was just curious.
Yes, the way you solve for it is you've got to drive by the structure and either park along the side of the structure or park behind it, right? And
I'm trying to visualize that. I guess I'm not seeing.
We'll bring
Well, there's a lot of-
We'll
okay.
bring some examples back at the next meeting.
Yeah.
You have some similar issues with purely very much apartment type development. If you were to do an L-shaped development like here, you would have to have the longer part of the L up by the street, and you'd have to have parking either tucking back to the rear behind the building. And so that does require access to get back there. But one reason this is something we're doing is for the DOZA project, working on design issues, what they call the public realm, that street environment is what they say is one of Portland's most important design values, and really trying to cultivate a street frontage of buildings oriented to the street, lined versus having parking areas, what you're seeing along the street, and the idea that it really creates a more engaging, interesting pedestrian environment than when you're setting much of the site or much of the building environment back away from sidewalks.
Okay. Are there any other questions or comments on this one? Are we ready to take a poll? Straw poll being, I guess perhaps let's start with disallowing parking in front of buildings on small sites. For those who are supportive of that concept, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All of them. All of us. Here at the moment.
Just to clarify, was this to only limit the parking between a building and a street for small sites?
Yep, that was where we're starting.
Okay.
I guess then the next potential minor amendment to add on to that is, are we comfortable allowing accessory structures to be set behind that parking? Show of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8. Okay. And then the next question is on large sites. And I'll throw it out as we kind of work through Eli's proposal, which is that we'll leave it at the only regulation there would be you're limited to 40% of the frontage, and no statement in the code on distance from in front of buildings. So show of hands in support of that. You're up, Teresa? That's 7. Looked like you were kind of debating. Sorry. So that's 7. Yep. Okay.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Moving on to topic number 2, which is about side setbacks along corridors. The 3 options I have out here is 1, no change to the proposal. So even along corridors requiring 5-foot setbacks in the multi-dwelling zones and the setbacks that apply in the mixed-use zones next to residential, and I'll get into that. Number 2 would be changing the proposal so no side setback would be required where multi-dwelling zoning and mixed-use zoning meet, where they abut. And number 3 is same as number 2, except in areas where you have an interspersed pattern where multi-dwelling zoning jumps back and forth to mixed-use zoning, requiring no side setbacks even between multi-dwelling zone properties in those zones. And I'll have some graphics to clarify that. The topic, as it was described, was looking at the fact that a lot of our corridors do have this pattern where you jump back and forth between the mixed-use zoning and the pink here and blue multi-dwelling zoning. And in many of our inner areas, it's most typically the current R1, new RM2 zone. And you can see in places like Belmont, Hawthorne, and Division, you do have that interspersed multi-dwelling zoning with mixed-use zoning. And just zooming in a little bit more closely, these are showing a couple of segments of Belmont. This is up by 37th and 39th, and then this is near 14th. And Typically, you have the R1 zoning applying to areas where you have an established pattern of residential buildings, and then the mixed-use zoning, sometimes at the intersections or these commercial nodes in between the residential areas. And over by 14th, a similar pattern, you're kind of jumping back and forth between the CM2 and what will be the RM2. Division, Southeast Division has a similar issue. Here, this is 26th Avenue. You've got a commercial node, but then a stretch of R1 to be RM2 zoning. And both sides, kind of the interspersed pattern. The stretches of zoning don't go very far before they're interrupted. And this is showing the area over near 35th along Division. Again, mixed use zoning interspersed with the R1 zoning. And zooming a little bit more closely here, you can see the mixed use zoning building here, and right next to it, the R1 multi-dwelling zoning. One thing that's worth mentioning is there was a plan for this area in 2006, the Division Green Street Main Street plan, and that did talk about this idea of having different characteristics between the busy commercial nodes and the residential areas between them. What we have here now are some illustrations showing the different options where we could approach this in alternative ways. The current proposal is just the standard 5-foot setback from side property lines in the multi-dwelling zones. Currently, in the mixed-use zones, there's a requirement for a 10-foot setback between the property line that abuts residential zoning and the building. And this applies whether it's single-family zoning or multi-dwelling zoning. And it's intended to provide space for landscaping as a buffer. It does also provide opportunity for windows and some access to light and air here. And so the setbacks you have in the multi-dwelling zones are a bit of a continuation with what's already there, where typically you do have buildings with the setbacks. So that's the current proposal right now. Side setbacks, including the 10-foot setback between the mixed-use zone and residential zoning, and then 5 foot to the property line setbacks for multi-dwelling. Option 2 is allowing for no side setback where the multi-dwelling and mixed-use zones meet, so allowing that join to happen there. And then option 3 was especially in areas where you have the interspersed pattern, not requiring that setback where the mixed use and multi-dwelling meets, but also within the multi-dwelling zoning, not requiring side setbacks in adjoining multi-dwelling zone properties in those areas. Just a couple issues to be aware of in these situations is that when you do allow buildings to be built up to the property line, that typically requires a firewall construction with no windows. So you do have the potential outcome of buildings being built up to the property line with no windows. And if existing housing remains for a while, that pattern could remain. Again, there are also some community plans that talk about trying to keep some of that contrast between the residential, a bit more setbacked and green, and the mixed-use zoning. But anyway, I'll leave it to you with the discussion. But again, one is no change to the proposals, keep the setbacks, including where the mixed use and multi-dwelling zones meet. Number 2 is don't require a setback where the 2 types of zones meet. And 3 is no setbacks all along those corridors, particularly when you have that interspersed pattern. One issue is that we would have to, if we did elect to go for 3, it could be a bit problematic to describe in a clear and objective way what an interspersed pattern is. It could be described by being on the same block frontage or some distance from a mixed-use zoning. BDS has registered some concern about these number 2 and 3. They'd prefer a simpler code where you have your setback is 5 feet and always 5 feet, and it doesn't vary according to the adjacent zone or the kind of corridor location.
And just note with option 2 there, it kicks in at the RM2 zone, what is today R2, because in our R1, because the RM1 zone is the sort of lower density. It has a little bit more softer edge to it, And so we would keep that 5-foot setback under option 2. You would keep that 5-foot setback requirement for that lower density zone,
The
multi-dwelling zone.
In the inner neighborhoods, the zoning that's on these corridors, especially where you have the main street patterns, is very predominantly RM2. There's almost no RM1. The RM1, when it is on a corridor, it's almost always in eastern Portland or southwest.
I'm seeing a series of hands up. So I saw Chris's first and then Teresa.
So a question and then a comment. Question for purposes of this options 2 and 3, what defines a corridor?
We were basing it on what are identified as civic and neighborhood corridors, and some of our mapping has shown that. So that's most of the streets where you do have the multifamily and commercial zoning. So Sandy and Chavez are both civic corridors, and then the 2-lane main streets like Alberta, Killingsworth, Division are neighborhood corridors. And this would apply to both types of zones. This mapping, in at least inner southeast, is showing those types of corridors where we're looking at maybe having that apply.
So that's clear and objective for BDS purposes. Okay. So with option 3, I hear the concern about interspersed. And I guess I'll ask the question, why wouldn't you just say no side setbacks for RM2 and up in the corridors and not worry about whether there was a commercial zone on the same block or not?
That could be an option 4, regardless of location. If you're on these corridors, no side setbacks.
I'd call it a simplification of option 3, but okay, thanks.
That would also apply. There are some stretches, like I think Killingsworth has got that, where you have multi-block stretches of multi-dwelling zoning and no mixed use, so there isn't much of a main street character to build on. It's mostly just houses. So that would be something to consider, that 122nd has a fair amount of multi-dwelling zoning. So it apply not just in those interspersed main street type areas, but a lot more range of types of corridors.
Teresa.
Okay, I have 2 questions. Can you put a driveway in those setbacks? That's my number 1 question. My number 2 question is, are there stormwater management concerns with something like option 3?
These would be allowances for 0 side setbacks, but people could choose to provide a setback, including to provide space for a driveway. And BES encourages, or they tend to prefer, vegetated stormwater facilities, but it could very well be in the rear of the site. One thing that we're not proposing a change are the lot coverage limits, and the lot coverage limits are more limited in the multi-dwelling zones compared to mixed use. The multi-dwelling zones, it's never more than a 70% lot coverage on corridors for the RM2, for example.
And Bill, the requirement for these larger buildings, the drive aisle has to be 20 feet wide, right? If you're accessing the parking, more than how many spaces?
Actually, the way it's in the code is up to 10 spaces could be served by a 10-foot wide driveway, although PBOT will sometimes require a 20-foot driveway if it's on a busy corridor and they're concerned about cars getting stuck going in and out.
It kind of depends. As these are drawn, and at this scale of building, we'd end up building a drywall system to deal with stormwater. So my question is exactly, and granted, it's the way these are drawn, is I start to look at, especially option 3, and I start to look at this extremely tortured zoning map, and it's just like, why in the world do we even have these zones then? I mean, to me, it's just like, it's a commercial corridor, it's a commercial mixed-use zone. So, it's a challenge, I guess I'm throwing back to our group here, is if we truly think there's a purpose for having these residential mixed-use zones interspersed along these corridors in the way that they are, then having side setbacks is at least the compromise to that pattern. If you're going for option 3, perhaps even option 2, you could argue, then it's just like, to me, what are we even doing? in the corridors. Let's just make them commercial mixed-use zones. And granted, I know that's a whole new zoning mapping project, but just a thought for food for thought here. So I see Eli's hand up.
Yeah, I feel like the balancing act. Do you have the slide that shows the whole city where those civic and neighborhood corridors are?
Yes.
'Cause that's what's bouncing around in my head, is that there's some areas where I agree completely with what Kat suggested, that, look, it's a corridor, maybe we just make it one and have consistent zoning on both sides. But some of those streets, I'm just looking at this now, are, looking at the red, there's long stretches of multi-dwelling housing with no commercial mixed use in it at all. So I guess that would be.
Well, hold up. The red is commercial mixed use.
Sorry.
It's the blue that's the
I'm flipping it, yeah.
residential
I guess,
multi-dwelling.
right. So the residential area is like, is that Lombard at the north end there? Up on left?
This is Killingsworth up
That's
here.
Killingsworth,
Actually,
okay.
I cut off Lombard just so you could see it a little bit better.
Okay.
And actually, what that map didn't show is where you have the RM1 zoning, where Killingsworth has stretches of that, and usually the outer corridors. Fair point about is it more of a mapping issue? If there's a sense that the whole corridor should allow 0 side setbacks, is it ultimately a zoning issue? Is it residential zoning more of an expectation that there are some setbacks and less high building coverage? I don't think we have anything planned right now to revisit the zoning in all these places. So that's one thing to bear in mind.
Well, I guess the balance I'm getting is I like the intent of option 3. So my instinct is to maybe go for option 4, as Chris described. But I worry a little bit about some of these, although they might be labeled civic and neighborhood corridors, some of them feel like they're pretty long expanses of residential zoned areas where I'm not so sure I'm ready to say, wherever a multi-dwelling hits another multi-dwelling, you can put up a blank wall up. So that's the balance I'm trying to get to, because I think there is some subtlety in which strips you pick. So I really like the intent of 3 for especially neighborhoods that do feel like commercial mixed use, but for some reason there's not just one lot that's RM2 or RM3, but there's like 3 in a row. It seems weird to treat it as, make it matter whether you're what your side zoning is on both sides of you. Is there any chance that 3 could be written in a way that there is clear and objective?
I think it would be possible. It could be based on proximity or block frontage. It does provide less certainty to people. They have to dig a bit deeper into the code to figure out what their setbacks are, because it would be varying according to proximity to mixed use zoning.
Okay. Then my instinct would be to see if staff could do that, and that would be sort of a bridge to where we actually do a rezoning project.
Bill, I have a question. So what you've masked up here, what's that masked up at? RM2, RM1,
These are showing just the 4-story mass, which is the maximum height in the RM2 zone. I don't think they were looking very carefully at what the FAR is. It probably is showing what would be a bonus FAR, not the base lower scale. I think 1.5 to 1 FAR you would have in that zone. It would assume you're doing some inclusionary housing or other bonus.
Okay. Okay. So Ben, Katie, Chris.
Just a comment. I'm intrigued by option 2 and 3. I think it's kind of I look at it as a creative workaround for the, to compensate for some of the limitation of Euclidean zoning, and it kind of is going perhaps a little bit more towards something that's more form-based. So whether it's residential or it's commercial, the form, if you squint, it's kind of similar. And it does seem to personally kind of jive better with the idea of creating corridors. I also like the fact that, that's an option that you have. Maybe you do a driveway on the side if you need to, so the building isn't at the property line, but then maybe you have that flexibility on the other side. And I would submit that probably not everybody's going to go to the property line, so it kind of gives you a little more flexibility, but it kind of incentivizes the behavior that you want, really, to create some compact and continuous frontage along the main corridors. I guess I'm showing my European bias here.
Katie?
So I'm going to show my my suburban girl bias. I'm not quite getting this one. I'm wondering, and I might even need some help from the rest of the commission. Why don't you want to have setbacks between these buildings? I mean, it sounds like people are kind of going towards not having setbacks, and I'm not getting why you wouldn't want to have them. I maybe need 101 here. So just somebody could explain that to me.
I think, sorry.
Okay, not being an architect, I'll just tell you what I think. You can put a bigger building there.
Really? It's about that just having a bigger building?
Well, it is a bigger building, but it's not that much bigger in all honesty. So, but yes, you're maybe getting another unit on a floor. I think it certainly is a form. For me, I'm thinking as a form thing, which is why I'm kind of asking the question and trying to get you guys to think about it that way. As you're driving down the street, can we maybe go to one of the aerials that you were showing? So, for instance, as you're driving down the street here, you'll notice, or walking down the street, even better. Thank you, Chris. Riding your bike.
Riding your bicycle. Yeah,
I appreciate that correction. You know, you're going through a variation along the street. So, do you want the street to feel more uniform and more commercial, such as at Southeast Division or these different Powell or these corridors that we're talking about, or do you probably not Powell? Okay, sorry. Anyway. Or do you want it to feel like a mix of, you know, I am walking past the front doors of some homes, and then there's a business, and then there's another business, and there's a home, and you know, that's what you got going on today. And I think it's just in the future, do you want it to feel like a continuation of this mix, or do you want it to feel more commercial? Now, so going back to Bill's massing, the thing that's interesting is that what you're seeing here today are single family homes versus this is what's allowed. So you're going to get big buildings there. So potentially, and in the future, it's going to happen. So as that starts to happen, this is gone, right? This has gone away because it's redeveloped into this type of form. What's the setback buying you now? What's it accomplishing? And so now you've still got a series of long, large buildings along this street that you're walking by. And in some ways, you could argue you're walking by and you're looking down this teeny little 10-foot corridor for 40 feet, and that's not buying you much, right? It's just a side yard, and it's not even really all that great to look at. It's like an alley.
Okay, interesting. Thank you. I appreciate this level of discussion.
So, Chris, you had your hand up.
I did. I just can't help taking the opportunity to reflect that back during Task 5, prolific emailer Doug was jumping up and down at us at why are we leaving so much R1 on the corridors, and you know, this shows he was seeing more clearly than we were where we were going to wind up at this point. So I have to give credit where it's due.
Okay, any other comments or questions on this before we move on? Take a straw poll. Okay, I'm not seeing anything, so sorry. I'm just trying to figure out where to start here. I think maybe just start with, I'm sorry, what did you throw out there, Chris, as 4?
Option 4 would not require the interspersed commercial to allow the 0 setback. And I don't know, I think Eli may have talked me out of it. I'm not strongly committed to it.
Okay, now you threw me. So let's start maybe with option 3 and just get a straw poll. Doesn't mean you can't vote more than once. Let's just kind of figure out how to start somewhere here. So this would be option 3 is do not require the side setbacks. Between multi-dwelling zone properties and your mixed-use properties at interspersed mixed-use zoning locations.
Comment/question on number 3.
Yeah.
I assume BDS's problem is what the hell does interspersed mean? And you'd have this. So I think in the absence of clarity, I can see their concern, and that would certainly persuade me.
Well,
I don't know if Chris was
I
getting
think
to an
it's-
answer to that, but I
I
don't
think
like
it's more than clarity as what code complexity, and as Bill said, having to not only look at your site, but then figure out, do I have a mixed use zoning in the same block or within 200 feet
it's
of the
complexity.
site, and I'm measuring this side and I'm measuring this side, and what is it, as opposed to just saying that, you're on this corridor, it's this.
So could we let's take number 3 and just say along civic corridors? Or is there a way to just say it's along certain corridors instead of trying to do the interspersed?
That's getting
Well,
to
that was
Chris's
option
proposal.
That's what you
4.
had.
So 3 is I think more of
Not
a
lot of
asking a little more of the
Nuanced.
code writers
Yeah.
to use language that kind of differentiate between some of these corridors and other corridors.
And if I could suggest process-wise, Madam Chair, that number 2 is probably a lower hurdle, and therefore maybe the first vote, and with 3 being the next level up.
I'm happy to take the suggestion. So we'll start with 2. And doesn't mean you can't vote more than once. So how about that? Do you support option 2, which does not require side setbacks where multi-dwelling zones abut mixed-use zones?
I guess, yeah, I changed my mind.
Looks like we've got 8 votes there. So then the next question is,
Can I ask a
go ahead.
clarifying question? On
Please.
number 3, can we phrase it as basically the intersperse is really an occurrence that happens in neighborhood nodes, or in those sections of the corridors where you actually have a node where you're more likely to encounter proximity with the commercial zones?
do we have centers that kind
we
of
could
take
limit
care of it
to
maybe?
centers areas.
Because that's my concern. It seems like we're kind of doing something that perhaps makes more sense in a node, but once you're still in the corridor, but when you're out of the corridor, maybe not so much.
We would have to create use probably there is a provision in the mixed use zones centers Main Street overlay that applies to center type locations.
But that's pretty narrow. Those are pretty narrowly defined.
Yeah, it tends to apply to the core commercial areas, but I think it includes, I don't know, we'd have to look to see if we could use that, but we'd have to create some zoning code tool because the center designations are comprehensive plan designations, and we'd have to find a way to make sure it's a zoning code regulation.
It'd be complicated as I'm thinking about my work process. So here's the thought. Let's take a vote on 3, and we challenge you with coming up with some way to meet our intent. If there's a majority of people who like where that's going, and then you can come back to us and see if you can come up with some language that gets at it. Does that seem fair? Instead of trying to get the language tonight. Okay, so who's in favor of number 3 if it gets tweaked in a manner that we can all support? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Right.
True.
I would just have a.
I don't know how it's going to get tweaked, but we'll see.
To me, this is another example of a good idea that just doesn't work in a code. And I understand we're going to task staff with trying to make it work, but we'll see what they come back with. But I think it's unfortunate.
It'll be code complexity. I think there's sometimes a preference of our development standards table says your side setbacks are 5 feet. And the amount of footnotes you have attached to it is, of course, a register of code complexity.
It's the kind of thing that drives a lot of people in public crazy about the zoning code. It gets beyond semi-digestible book of rules into.
We're working things, especially getting at the intent that you just voted on. The next subtopic, there's a relationship to the previous one. It's about building height step downs. Kat had expressed interest in really diving in greater detail to take a look at the way the step down requirements work. The proposal for the multi-dwelling zones is to limit building height to 35 feet tall within a 25-foot distance from properties of single dwelling zoning. And it'd be roughly similar to this. This is in a mixed-use zone, and this is an approach that was adopted as part of the mixed-use zoning project. There's a lot of community discussion and concern about what were considered large buildings next to a single-family zoning, and a bit of a compromise was stepping down and at a 25-foot, within a 25-foot distance of a property line that's adjacent to single dwelling zoning, and limiting that height to 35 feet. In the mixed-use zones, there's also a requirement for a 10-foot setback from the building from that property line. But in the multi-dwelling zones, it's just a standard 5-foot setback. So there's a little bit of a difference. But again, the intent is to really respond to policies that do call about providing scale transitions between larger scale and smaller scale zones. I wanted to provide a bit of clarity about the way the step downs work in the mixed use zones and in the multi-dwelling zones. In the mixed use zones, there's a 35-foot height limit for that 25-foot distance when you're abutting single dwelling zones. There's also a 45-foot height limit when you're abutting multi-dwelling zones, primarily the RM1 and RM2. There's no step down to the larger scale RH zone. And there's also a step down requirement when you're across a local street from single dwelling zoning. It's also the same 35-foot height limit, but it applies only to the 15% or 15 feet from the front property line. Now, with the multi-dwelling zones, the proposal is only to provide those step downs adjacent to single dwelling zoning and to not have that 10-foot setback. And to highlight the way that, actually, I wanted to provide a little clarity because we haven't discussed this very much. As I mentioned, there's also a step down requirement when you have single dwelling zoning across a local service street. And in the mixed use zones, the thinking, just to explain it with these diagrams, was that on a primary corridor, and this is Mississippi, for example, allowing the large scale buildings there, but on the backside of a block, requiring some step down to single dwelling zoning. And the idea was within a 15-foot deep band along the street property line, limiting that height to 35 feet. You have issues or situations along 82nd and along Martin Luther King Boulevard where you do have that local service street on the backside of the corridor fronting block that interfaces with the single dwelling zoning. And the intent was to moderate the scale some when you're transitioning to the single dwelling zoning. And our proposal was for the multi-dwelling zones is to provide a similar step down in scale from the larger scale zones to single dwelling zoning. This is a somewhat complicated diagram, but it's kind of a complicated set of regulations that shows the different types of step downs you get in different situations. And starting up here, the CM3 zone, it's a mixed use zone that allows 65 feet building height. You would have to step down to 45 feet adjacent to RM1 or RM2 zoning. The CM2 zoning, which is our most common corridor zoning, it usually allows just 45 feet of height. When you're building to that 45 feet of height, there's no step down to the multi-dwelling zones. However, when you have the same CM2 zone adjacent to single dwelling zoning, then it's a step down to 35 feet. And it's the same thing proposed for the similar scale 4-story RM2 zone, a step down to 35 feet. And this is probably your most common sort of situation where you have a relatively narrow band of higher density zoning along a corridor, and going further away, you interface with the lower scale zones. Things are a little bit more complicated here. This is showing the CM3, the large scale mixed use zone, and it's showing the step down across a local service street from single family zoning. And then if you happen to be adjacent to RM2 zoning, a step down to 45 feet. This is a somewhat unusual arrangement. It's rare that you have the RM2 zoning adjacent to CM3, but I thought I'd just show you. And RM2, which usually allows 45 feet of height, you would need a step down both across a local service street from the single family zoning, and if you're adjacent to single family zoning, there's that step down to 35 feet. A more common situation is this, where you have the RM2 zone, and to the back of it is the R2.5 zone, or R5, and then it's a step down to 35 feet. With RM1 zone, which only allows 35 feet, there's no step down at all. So basically, just to summarize, the biggest scale mixed use zones do step down to 45-foot height adjacent to the lower scale multi-dwelling zones. And both the multi-dwelling and the mixed use zones would step down to single dwelling zones. And there is a smaller step back across a local service street. One thing I should mention is, despite the complexity, it's actually a simplification of what we have in our design overlay zone. Our community design standards require the height to step down to the same height as that's allowed in the adjacent zone. And there was a simplification here in that the height step down is the 35 feet when you're adjacent to single dwelling zoning, and it's regardless of whether it's R5 or R2.5. Currently in the D overlay, you step down to 30 feet if it's next to R5 and 35 feet if it's next to R2.5. Same thing with the multi-dwelling zoning step down. It's currently in the D overlay, you step down to the exact height of the zone. It's complex. One thing, at least to be aware of with the multi-dwelling zones, is a lot of the multi-dwelling zoning is in a district sort of format, such as the center neighborhood area near 60th and the J district. So you don't have as much of the adjacency. You do have in the dark blue some areas that do abut single dwelling zoning, and it's about 30% of the RM2 zoning that abut single dwelling zoning. One other thing to mention, part of the compromise with the step down was many neighbors were saying that the step down shouldn't be to the allowed height of the adjacent zone. It should be to the existing height of an existing building. Their take was, if it's a 2-story building, you should step down to 2 stories. Where staff landed with mixed use, and as we're proposing here, it's to that more standard 35-foot height adjacent to single dwelling zoning. So we didn't have a specific proposal for a change to this, but I did want to share the proposal and clarify, at least when it's possible, given it's a fairly complex topic.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate especially your scale graphic. I think that was very helpful. I know that was probably torturous to do. Going back to it, you now are going to get a proposal.
Can I ask a question?
You want to see that?
Can you go back to your existing house next to the?
Oh,
can you tell us what the number? What's the setback? What's the height? What are we looking at there in terms of?
This is showing a mixed use zone. So there's a 35-foot height limit here, and that applies to a 25-foot distance from the property line. So you max out at 35 feet.
10 feet of setback, and then 15
and a 10-foot
feet
setback. And there's a requirement for tall landscape screening. So I think shrubs are at least 6 feet tall, and a 10-foot distance here. For the multi-dwelling zones, it's a little bit different. It's the same 35 height limit next to single family, but there's only a 5-foot setback versus the 10 you have in the mixed-use zones.
But it's still 25 feet for the stepped down.
Yep, you're
portion.
limited to 35 feet for that 25-foot distance.
So in a multi-dwelling zone, that lower portion could come out 5 more feet.
Right, and we've heard from some housing providers that the 3-story scale is especially cost efficient, so they especially wanted to make sure that 3-story buildings aren't having to cut a notch off of their top. So allowing a 5-foot setback simplifies things to some extent for at least 3-story buildings.
Any other questions? If not, if you could go back to thank you. And explain to me what we're accomplishing with the step down between the CM3 and the RM2. I don't get it.
That's transitions in scale. Part of it was taking existing regulations, again, we had in the design overlay, and trying to simplify it to some extent. So it was taking a precedent where there's already a requirement. If you have a large scale zone, you need to step down in scale to an adjoining smaller scale zone.
Okay. So for what it's worth to my fellow commissioners, I'm not a big, you've all heard it, I'm not a big fan of step downs. I'm not going to refight the battle about commercial zones and residential zone step downs, but I don't think that a 20-foot difference between a 45-foot building in the RM2 zone next to a CM3 building is worth the complexity that adds to the structure of the CM3 in the transition story. In my opinion, you got two very large commercial feeling buildings next to each other. It's like the corridor we were looking at, if you think about that now. And I just think it creates a very odd form. So that could be, it could be turned, if you want to think about it. Do we ever have a CM3 next to an RM2 on a commercial corridor, and you're walking down the corridor, and that's just this weird building now?
Right. And didn't we just say they could touch?
Exactly. So I guess I'm not. That's the one proposal I would make. I'm not going to fight the battle on the rest, even though I'm not a proponent. Thank you so much, Bill, for putting this together. But I would propose not having that step down.
You want to get a second?
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion, Chris?
Well, yeah, isn't that a aspect of the mixed-use code? Is that in the scope of this project? It seems like it's you're dragging the mixed-use zones into this project a little bit. Which
perhaps
we have a bit, and well, just in the side setback, the one that we just talked about, we would reduce the mixed-use zone side yard setback the same. And I guess the clarifying question I would have is, so what you see there is that transition between the CM3 and the RM2 can be, the one on the left is when it's to the rear, and the one on the right is when it's to the side. Mm-hmm. You could eliminate it on the side, which I think what Teresa was getting at is you're in a corridor. We've said it's okay to have those two buildings side by side, so you really don't need that step back. And so you could distinguish between that side step back and the rear step back, or you could get rid of both of them. And yes, there is, we've nudged our way into the mixed use zone, and we can do it a little further, and we can do some outreach before it gets to council. But yeah.
One thing I should mention is that for the multi-dwelling zones, the big scale RM3 and RM4 zones that allow similar height to CM3, we did not propose a step down to either the mixed use or lower scale multi-dwelling zones. So there's one area where it's departing a little bit between the two types of zones.
Okay. Eli?
There was one more item in this graph, that the RM2 across the street from the R5. That also seemed like one that I wasn't convinced that that's a setback, that we need a step back situation.
Step down.
Step down. Thank you. I mean, it feels like if you're going to 45 feet high, you're doing wood. I mean, I think that probably in practice at RM2, maybe I'm wrong on this, someone would just pull the whole building back to 15 feet, which would make it further from the street. I'm interested if you think that's what would happen.
Especially with the lot coverage limits.
Yeah, they might do that. We put this step down to be consistent with the mixed-use zones. The general concept was for zones that allow similar scale buildings or similar height buildings in the mixed-use and multi-dwelling, if the goal is to step down in the scale, apply the same sort of standard. So if a 4-story mixed-use zone is across a local street from a single dwelling zone and it's stepping down to 35 feet, the idea is a 4-story multi-dwelling zone should do the same thing for a code consistency at the very least.
I think for me on this one, this is a case where the RM2 is just a CM3 can get some pretty darn big structures, a lot bigger structures than you can in RM2. So I guess that's why I was thinking the RM2, the CM3. I can see the point of that more, I guess.
I should mention that these step downs across a local service street only apply if you're more than 100 feet from a corridor. So if along the corridor you across a local cross street, you had single dwelling zoning, there would be no step down. It's more for the relatively unusual situations where you have full block zoning. As many of you know, a lot of our zoning for the higher density zones is a narrow band close to the corridor. So this is more predominantly where you have the full block zoning.
Well, I'm all for getting rid of your step down, Eli. So if you want to make that as a proposal, I'll certainly second it.
I would. Sorry. I want to ask one question before I do that. In the because we're mixing with other zoning chapters. If I remember correctly, the CM3 has this provision for larger sites to do like a plan development where you can get additional height, but there's discretionary review as part of it. Is that correct? Okay. Because I think that one of the reasons I like about the CM3 zone is that in chunkier sites, you have the opportunity to go even higher in the middle. But that's just in the middle. I mean, you still have to go through the discretionary process. So that makes me more comfortable about that. So I would propose to, when you're across the street, not have that step down requirement.
To clarify, are you referring to both the RM2 and the CM2 zone, or just the multi-dwelling RM2 zone?
I guess if I had my druthers, I'd say RM2 and CM2, but I'd probably be okay leaving CM3 where it is because you can go so tall there.
Tom, you look
Dad,
like
you
you're
think
biting your
I'm waiting for this to play out.
I can be convinced. What is it?
Well, let's maybe.
Let's discuss it, yeah.
Need to clarify, or we?
Well, let's so let's kind of maybe take a step back and talk. Let's go back to the discussion, and so hold that, Eli. We'll come back to it. Is there any more maybe discussion or questions on the elimination of the step down between CM3 and RM2? Okay, so since there's no more discussion or question, why don't we just take a straw poll on that for those who are in favor of sending you guys back into the mixed use zone code?
Just clarify side or rear or both.
For me, it would be both, but that's just me. So why don't we start there, and we can always break it apart.
Yep.
And there's also the across from the local street
So
thing, but that's a whole nother thing.
It's a whole other thing.
So, side.
Can I make a comment on it? if
Yeah,
we're
sure.
discussing it?
Absolutely.
I think that there is. I might be leaning a little bit towards the side rather than the rear, and my thinking is that the reason this is proposed as the mixed-use zone project is because the picture we were looking at then did not have that RM2 built out. There was a house behind there. And that does happen. I wish we didn't have so many split block zoning situations, but that happens quite a bit. So it was really kind of it was a compromise with the neighborhoods right behind it, where I think that if you have the single family, if you have the RM2 zoning along the strip, then it's much less reason to worry about step backs and stuff like that. So I mean, I might be able to be convinced to go on all sides, but I just wanted to bring up that as the different kind of pictures you're looking at back then.
I think it's a fair point. Joe, did you want to?
No, I would let's break it into those pieces. We could start with all sides and then just do.
So elimination of the side step down between RM3 and RM2, just the side. Show of hands.
CM3 and
CM3.
Sorry, thank you. We got 8 there. So next straw poll would be elimination of the rear setback between CM3 and RM2. Show of hands.
Which we don't. Do we have a picture of that over there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's rear.
I'll go with that.
And you have 8 there. So then now we'd be taking up your issues, Eli, with the step down across from a local street.
RM2.
Between RM2,
Maybe let's start with RM2.
just RM2.
Yeah. And I actually have a question. Are we allowed to do these changes in the other zoning code? Or is that going to create some we've got to notify everybody, we've delayed this process for 4 more months?
I don't think we have to send a formal notice to everybody, but we can do some outreach over the next 5 months and have people comment it at council.
Just for general understanding of process, could we be changing some totally different code in this process, the accessory, I don't know, home occupancy use, and it seems like
must go
I
right for
like these
inclusionary
changes,
zoning.
and we just did a couple of them in straw votes earlier on, but by extension, I could see it going too far.
I think
Yeah.
staff's been trying to limit it to providing consistency across two types of zones when you have similar types of regulations. But going to a totally different, unrelated regulation, I think that's going well beyond the scope we had envisioned.
It just weakens the whole proposal too if we have to navigate a perceived process foul at City Council. So that's tactical. I realize it's not making the right decision, but that always plays out that way.
Well, I guess I would hope, if this is the direction we all end up going, that you include this, of course, in all your outreach and with council. And I think it brings to light what we weren't wrestling with before and why it's come up again now.
Yep.
But, okay, so Eli.
So I guess I'm proposing first RM2 dropping the step down across the street from a residential zone.
Okay. Any questions on that or discussion?
Yes. I just want to point out that that in this diagram, we're just looking at this diagram, and the commercial corridor looks about the same as the local street. But a lot of times the local street is a very narrow little thing. And yeah, I think that I'm inclined not to support that because of the fact that it's there. You know, there's a lot of people who would like to protect the amount of sun and air and the look of for the R5 and the R25, 2.5.
Okay, thank you. Any additional comments or questions? Not seeing any. Okay, show of hands for eliminating the step down between RM2 and the local service street. 7.
I guess another situation is where the RM2 is side by side with a residential zone. That one, I'm not sure I'm going to propose that one because I think that's they're right next to each other. I think the cross the street is more like doesn't matter that much. That's what's in my head. So,
okay.
Does CM2 arise where it's across the street from residential? It's just not depicted here.
Okay. Yeah, it
so
does.
I'd say the next one will be CM2, which the massing is very similar to the RM2.
And the same step down applies. So that'd be a question of if you're
So I'll
not going to
propose that
step
as
down an
another
RM2, CM2
amendment. Yeah, it's the CM2, which would look very much like that RM2, to drop the step down requirement when it's across the street from residential.
Any other questions or discussion on that? Okay, not seeing anything. Take a straw poll on supporting that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, 7. Sorry, Jeff.
That's
the
right.
first
Still
time.
trying to understand what I was voting on.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay.
All right.
I think we're there.
On.
Thank you for walking us through that math, and thank you for the massing. I really appreciate that.
I think the topics we've been through are maybe the meatiest ones, but just a time check, we have 35 minutes.
Okay.
Actually, topic 3 is fairly meaty. This is front setbacks. The proposal for the mid-scale RM2 and RM3 zones is to require 10-foot front setbacks with some options for reduced setbacks in specific situations. And an option is to reduce that required front setback in the RM2 and RM3 zones to a 5-foot setback. And just a little bit of background. Again, the intent of that setback was to reflect common neighborhood characteristics where they often do have landscape front setbacks, and also to limit privacy impacts when you have windows at grade right next to sidewalks. Currently in the R1 and RH zones, which becoming RM2 and RM3, the front setbacks are 3 feet or 0. And the proposal is generally to require a 10-foot front setback, but to provide some allowances for reduced setbacks versus based on these situations. If you have adjacent buildings that have smaller setbacks, you can continue that pattern and match those setbacks. If you're doing ground floor commercial, you could build right up to the sidewalk. Also, if you're raising the ground floor 2 feet above sidewalk level, you'd be able to reduce it to a 5-foot setback. And there's also an option for if you have courtyards open to the street, providing a big chunk of green, the building wings would be able to go right up close to the sidewalk. So the general base is a 10-foot setback, but with specific situations providing lesser setbacks. Also, when we're looking at other cities and when the way they regulate the multi-dwelling zones, Vancouver, BC was one place we looked at. They have a very established approach where their mixed-use commercial zones are intended to be hardscape right up to the sidewalk zones, but even their higher density multi-dwelling zones see more of a green edge. And part of it is keeping the characteristics of some of the residential zones and areas. But that circles us back to our question that there are advantages to 5-foot setbacks. One criticism we had in testimony was that front setback area is not the most usable for people. On the other hand, providing more than a 5-foot setback does provide space for small trees and elements that could green up the street environment and help reduce urban heat island effects. But at any rate, the options we're suggesting is to keep the 10-foot front setback with those options for reduced setbacks, or to reduce the standard setback to 5 feet.
Okay. Teresa?
So I have a question. Are planting strips, sidewalk planting strip required? So there would be a space for a tree or not?
Typically, PBOT street standards do require this furnishing zone where you have the street trees located. So that would be independent from what happens on the private property side.
Any other comments? So are we going to get ourselves into the similar discussion of what happens when this is up next to a CM3? And does it have setback? I can't remember. I'm just refresh my memory. So if I'm going down the sidewalk and got a RM2 next to a CM3,
I think that's where the exception applies to an existing building, not necessarily what's allowed by the zone. So if your CM3 zone had a building at the sidewalk, then you could do your RM2 building at the sidewalk. But if it was a Fred Meyer parking lot, you would have to step it back.
To clarify something too is even in the mixed use zones, if you're doing ground floor residential, they either need to be set back 5 feet or raised 2 feet above grade. So, but ground floor commercial in mixed use zones can always come right up to the sidewalk, which we're proposing to also allow if you're doing commercial in the multi-dwelling zones.
Okay, so I think you just clarify for me, but if I'm understanding it, if you went for option 2, it's going to align more with the CM3 zones, because you said it's a 5-foot setback and a...
It would.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're coming down the street. And granted, I get the existing building exception, but if I've got a site I'm building today and tomorrow it goes to the CM3 and it comes to the lot line, I've got this jigger going on. Go ahead, Jeff.
Quick question. So RM2, RM3, that's transitioning from R1 and RH, right? What's the current setback in R1 and RH?
R1, it's 3 feet.
Okay.
And RH, it's 0.
Okay, thank you.
But they are often located in places where there are those established characteristics.
Any other comments, discussion items, questions?
Just wanted to point something out. There, you have a picture of, I guess it's like the example of what you don't want.
You showed it here on your slide.
Yeah.
Right. There you go.
Right, the gray building. And so I might be thinking of a different part, but in other words, wasn't there one of these options where the setback would go with the neighborhood? Is that? Yeah.
The 10-foot setback's intended to provide more of that continuity, but if the neighborhood already has smaller setbacks, you can match that. one thing to be aware of, at least in the corridors in East Portland and on major corridors in East Portland, like 122nd or Stark, there's actually a requirement for a 10-foot front setback in the mixed-use zones. There's a lot of concern in East Portland about just having, especially residential, so close to the street frontages of these very busy arterials, and people saw East Portland having more of a green edge to what's there.
Well, what I wanted to point out is that oftentimes we see these pictures of these really classic, beautiful buildings up to the edge, and then this group wants to bring the future buildings down like that. But actually, this building is not one of those classical buildings, and so I want to warn you about going in that direction without. You could end up on 122nd with a whole bunch of buildings, and there's a lot of foot traffic on 122nd. So when these issues came out to East Portland, there was more support for the larger setbacks.
Did you show the Vancouver image again?
This is in the West End, I think just off Denman. And this is in Kitsilano. Actually, these are both in Kitsilano. Sorry.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Yeah,
Comments,
so,
Eli?
but back to the image that Katie was bringing up, those, look, can you go back to there. The one on the left, that's basically a 0 setback. Maybe there's an even overhang. That wouldn't be allowed in either option 1 or option 2, the 5-foot setback.
Yep, the 5-foot setback would be definitely deeper than that.
So question though, if I'm going to build up against this gray apartment building and it has no setback,
You can match it.
I can match it. I can continue this pattern
Yes.
the way we have it written today. Okay. Yikes.
Well, I mean, I'll make a pitch for option 2, which is that I like that we're sharing some. The thing that triggered me on this was the step up requirement, because I think, well, we're trying to make these homes adaptable, and I'm not sure I want to incentivize someone to bring a house close to the street and put some steps in it so lots of people can't even get into the building. So that's what made me think of this. But I like the idea that you've got some options like the courtyard development where you can go right up close, and that these are really the higher density of the RM zones where we're talking about this. So I support the 5-foot setback as proposed here, and retaining the option to go closer if something's next to it is closer, and the courtyard layout where you can go right up to it. So that's why I suggest that one.
Any other comments, questions? Okay, so let's just start with number 1. Show of hands if you are going to support no change to staff's proposal, which is requiring a 10-foot setback in the RM2 and 3 zones. I'll be honest, I'm kind of wavering, for whatever that's worth. So it looks like, are you affirm? Who's wavering? Just out of curiosity. We've got 1, 2 firms and 3 waivers.
I have to say the picture of Vancouver, BC makes a very compelling point. Coupling that with perhaps 0 setbacks and, pretty generous height allowances, maybe this is an area where a little more flexibility for some meaningful landscaping makes sense.
I can flex on it too. I'm not begging on this one.
Okay. So show of hands for number 2, which is 5 foot.
See how persuasive
I'm just trying again. I'm not seeing anybody supporting that. So we're back to option 1.
All right.
Okay.
For the trees.
Now we're moving on to the easy ones, I think. All right, topic 4. It's about accessory structures and required setbacks. 3 options, and I'll provide a little more background about this. 1 is no change to the proposal, and we had already determined that accessory structures, small accessory structures would be allowed in side and rear setbacks on small sites, so up to 10,000 square feet in size. Option 2 is to allow small accessory structures in required setbacks regardless of site size, so basically all sites. And 3 is somewhat independent. It could be attached to either 1 or 2, which is to limit accessory structures to a maximum height of 20 feet. And I've got a couple slides to explain what is meant by these. There had already been a discussion about small sites and providing more flexibility for what happens on the site to encourage compact small site development. And as part of that, the decision was made to allow accessory structures. And when I mention accessory structures, this is detached garages, includes accessory dwelling units, bike sheds or storage sheds, or garbage or recycling facilities when they're covered. So the current proposal is to allow those accessory structures on small sites in the required side and rear setbacks. So you wouldn't have to have this little setback from the property line. And the proposal would be to also allow that on larger sites, more than 10,000 square feet. Related to the height, just to clarify the way height is regulated, and these are mostly existing standards. There are limitations for when you're building these accessory structures in required setbacks where they can't be more than 15 feet. And then for sites where they're just houses, duplex or attached houses, accessory structures are limited to 20 feet, even when they're outside of that setback area. And currently, for multi-dwelling development, so apartment buildings, fourplexes, what have you, the base height applies to accessory structures that are not in the required setbacks. So theoretically, they could be 35 feet in the RM1 zone or 45 feet in the RM2 zone. We haven't really seen accessory structures built to those heights. Staff's not sure if there's a good reason to put in that regulation, limiting the height to 20 feet until it's been proven that it's a real problem. A couple of things we brainstormed that could be accessory structures that could run afoul of a 20-foot height limit for multi-dwelling development is if you're doing a structured parking building that's separate from the residential building, that would be subject to it. Or if you're doing a large community building that's more than one story, you could run into issues with a 20-foot height limit. But anyway, that's related to the option 3. So again, the options are no change to the proposal, only allow accessory structures in required setbacks on small sites. We did run some numbers, and about 80% of properties are 10,000 square feet or smaller. And then option 2 would be allow accessory structures in required setbacks regardless of site size. And then option 3, again, it could apply to either. It would be to limit accessory structures outside of the setbacks to 20 feet instead of the usual base height limit.
Great. Okay. Any comments, questions? Chris?
A few questions. You mentioned ADUs. Are ADUs permissible in all multi-dwelling zones?
Yes, although by definition they're accessory to a house, and I think they're soon to be duplexes. So you cannot have something officially designated an ADU if it's secondary to a fourplex. It's only by definition they're secondary to single family type development.
Okay. And number 2 and number 3 are really completely separate proposals, right? I don't think I favor number 3. Number 2, is there a height limit in the setback separate from the overall height limit?
Yes, within required setbacks. So like if you're building within that 5-foot side or rear setback, your height is limited to 15 feet. And there's also a limit on the footprint. Buildings can't be more than 24 by 24 feet in dimension.
Okay, so I think I support number 2 with those limits, and I don't support number 3.
Any other? Eli?
So this was, I was started on the accessory structures code update long before I joined this body. So it probably ended up with you at some point along the way. But the compromise through that was to say there was a time when you could have garages up to a certain size right up against the property line, but you couldn't put an accessory dwelling unit of the same size in that same location. And through that code update, we said it doesn't matter what happens inside there; it's how big the structure is. So it's important, I think, on one end too, to point out these are not just any accessory structures; these are scaled down ones that the city felt okay to put right against the property line in the single family zone context of that code update. So what I'm hoping is that we take that same logic and apply it to this zone too. Some detached accessory structures, if it's outside the setback, there's this whole set of rules for those. They could be taller or whatever, but if it's inside the setback, as long as it's no more than 24 feet long, no more than 600 square feet, no more than 10 feet high, it's okay to be against the property line. And so that's my thinking is that let's just allow it in this zone also. And this zone does tend to have larger sites. If you have a site, I don't know that it makes sense distinguishing it, just allowing it be up against the property line as long as it's small. Doesn't seem any more of a impediment on the neighbor. So I guess I like one, and so I like number 2. Yeah, just to make it regardless of size. And the just for the context, the reason option 3 is even there. I agree these don't come up very often in that code update. People were building accessory structures that were very tall and using them as houses, and sort of getting around the code by calling them accessory structures instead of calling them accessory dwelling units. But I take what staff's point is that that's not happening in these zones. That abuse isn't happening to the code, so I don't see a need to do number 3 either, unless we just want to have consistency.
So, Bill, just clarify, like, I know some places have guest houses. So they're a bedroom, bathroom, not a full kitchen. Residents can rent it out for when guests come. That would be an accessory structure where you might want to limit it to 20 feet.
Yeah, I mean, for consistency, we would, because I guess just to show, like, option 3 is talking about outside the setbacks, right?
Yeah.
So this is a case where if we struck the same compromise we did in the residential zones, we would say that if it's an accessory structure, that means no one's living in it. Why should we allow it to be
35 feet,
35 feet, and then claim that it's not a dwelling, but put someone in there anyway? That was the issue that was happening in the single dwelling zones. And
and to be clear, if in the majority of what's there now in the multi-dwelling zones are still houses, and they would be subject to that 20-foot height limit. So the question for number 3 is, well, currently the 20-foot height limit applies to accessory structures that are accessory to houses, duplex attached houses. It does not apply to accessory structures that are accessory to multi-dwelling buildings. So probably a somewhat differing situation.
So if I'm hearing Eli's proposal correctly, it's saying number 2, but with the residential accessory structure code overlaid on it, which is the limitations of those accessory units that are in the residential code would apply to the multi-dwelling zones as well, and therefore number 2 gets
I
selected.
think that's right. And they actually put
come
it in
together.
the proposal. It's just they simplified it.
Think that right. So for option 1, which is where we're at now, for small sites, you have the same restrictions as the residential zones, the single-family residential zones. So 15 feet in the side setback, you can encroach on the side setback. Option 2 applies that to the 20% of multi-dwelling properties that happen to be large sites.
Got it.
Right.
And with the same limitations.
Okay. Any other discussion on this item?
So what was the answer? And so what are we doing on height? Either Eli's proposal or what you're
I'd keep it and the third item independent, because you could choose to allow small accessory structures regardless of site size and the side and rear setbacks. But number 3 is only about areas outside of the usual setback areas, whether you should limit the height of any accessory structure to 20 feet. And this is for apartment or multi-dwelling development type.
So inside the setback, what's the height limit?
15 feet, and that would be the case for both 1 and 2. Number 3 is not about what's happening in the setback area.
Okay.
It's outside of that required setback.
Okay. So let's go ahead and take a straw poll on number 2. Show of hands in support of that. We have 8. And then the next straw poll is the limitation on height outside of the setbacks. So I'm 20 feet from the side yard setback, and do I get to have a building or a structure separated from my building that's limited in height or not? Or can I just have like a series of all buildings that meet the height of the zone? I guess for whatever it's worth for me, to me, just whatever the zoning height is fine, because you're out of the setback.
Mhm.
But
What kind of a building would that be? I mean,
What do they call them? Follies, right? You can do a
oh
little
yeah,
tower,
yeah, I like it.
right? Clubhouse tower.
okay.
You know,
What I can
Okay.
imagine is
lighthouse.
Bungee jumping.
for multi-dwelling development, at least according to our brainstorm, it could be things like if you have a community building that doesn't have residential units, and if it's 2 stories, then that could run afoul of that. And if you're, especially a very high density zone, if you have a separated parking structure, it would be hard to do that.
It's not the most cost efficient way to build, so it's rarely going to happen.
Yeah, it's rare.
Yeah.
We couldn't come up with examples where they're exceeding it anyway.
Yeah.
I have a thought. I'm fine. I don't think we need to go with 3, but I'll make it as an illustration of one of the code discrepancies we have is that, as Bill's pointed out, like if it's multi-dwelling development is one thing, if it's a single-family development on that property, it's a different. It's just something that's weird. Like that comes up in the code multiple times. And at some point, it's like, who cares if it's a duplex or a fourplex on that site? As the code's written right now, actually the rules for your accessory structures, it matters whether it's a duplex or a fourplex. If it's a fourplex, it's multi-dwelling development, and you have one set of rules. And in this case, we just say you can go whatever the height of the zone for accessory structures. If it's a duplex on that same site, it would be capped to 20 feet because that's what the accessory structures are in single dwelling development. So it's just this legacy we have of having 2 different codes. So on the same property, it zoned RM, zone R2 or RM1, whatever it is. The rules for what you can do in your outbuildings depends on whether the main building is classified as multi-dwelling or as a single dwelling. Does that make any sense?
Yep.
Yeah. So it ends up being these long run-on. This code applies if it's not a house, duplex, attached house, blah, 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 blah. But if it's a triplex, then you have a different set of rules. So I hope that at some point that gets cleaned up. I think we've done a good job in this project to get rid of some of those extended clauses, because I think ultimately it doesn't matter that much. And we're heading that way. We're not quite getting all the way. Thanks.
Okay. So if we could take a straw poll on 3, is there anybody in support of limiting the accessory structures to a maximum height of 20 feet? I am not seeing any hands.
All right, moving right along. Topic 5 is about our pedestrian standards, and this is about the width of pedestrian connections. Currently, and this is existing code, pathways have to be a minimum of 3 feet width when they're accessing up to 4 units, and then when they're accessing more than that, it's a minimum 5-foot pathway width. And a proposal is to change that so there's more of a gradient of pathway widths. 3 feet when you're accessing just a small number of units, 4 units. 4 feet when you're accessing 5 to 20 units, and 5 feet when accessing more than 20 units. Just a couple issues staff has identified. There's some concern about the greater administrative complexity of the gradient, especially it could be difficult to assign which pathways are serving how many units. It starts becoming more complex when you have that gradient. Also, there are some issues of people in wheelchairs or pedestrians are passing by. 5 feet provides a bit more space than 3 feet. I think the building code requires a minimum of 3 feet. So this is pretty much a zoning code issue. So again, proposal is to keep existing standards 3 feet wide for up to 4 units being served by the pathway, and 5 feet wide when serving more, or going for the gradient. And sorry, don't have images for this one.
Thank you, Bill. Any comments, questions, Chris?
So what's the policy rationale here? Is it the idea if there are more units, there'll just be more people passing each other, or that with more units you have more likelihood of somebody with a mobility device? Or
I think it's generally more units, more pass-by situations you want to accommodate. I should mention that the mixed-use zones, they have a 6-foot requirement for serving more than 4 units. And actually, I probably shouldn't have said anything about that.
so it just seems like you have a single lane path or you have a double lane path, and I don't know why you'd have so many variations in between. It seems a little odd to me.
Yeah.
Eli?
Well, I pitched this one too. Thank you guys for bearing with this. I've done developments where you have multi-unit, and 5 foot just feels like a wide path, like a lot of concrete in a multi-dwelling development. And then once you go to having to do some ramping in some situations, it's a wider ramp that you're doing. So my original proposal here was actually just make it 4 foot in general, if you're serving more than 4 units. But then I think Bill brought it to me, well, what if you have like a 4 or 5 story building? That's getting pretty narrow in that situation, 4 foot. So I said, okay, good point. Maybe some of them need to be wider. I still think that if you have you're doing a 20 unit development on a larger site, that lots of 5 foot paths to get to as your general path width, it's just a lot of concrete. I'd rather not have to make paths that wide, and I don't think it serves a big benefit in those situations. So I think that another approach would be just to say you have to do modify option 1, but just make it 4 feet for segments serving more than 4 units instead of 5. Then you have 3 versus 4. And just assume that if someone's building a large building, then they're not going to skimp that much. They'll make it wider like you need to be able to get to a front entrance. But anyway, that was the thinking behind it.
Any other comments? I mean, I guess, my first gut reaction was 3 feet's in the building code. What are we doing? But, the more I think about it, I actually think 5 feet is gracious. I think about like a hotel corridor, kind of, it's not in the code, but you wouldn't have a corridor less than 5 feet. You just, so I'm kind of for just saying it's a 5 foot wide pedestrian path in general. Forget 4 units or 20 units. So I guess,
Right.
Well, I think it was up 3 feet, keep standards. Does it not? 3 feet wide up to 4 units and 5 feet wide for others.
Guess on that one, I'd push back in hotels, like if you're just walking up to a house, I guess I work in a different setting. It's more in the, 8 buildings on a half-acre site, and you're just getting to front doors. It feels like it feels 5 foot wide. It's just wide. It's a long way.
As big as me.
What did you say?
About as big as me. A little shorter.
Okay, yeah. If you lie down across it, and you could be on the concrete the whole way.
Yes, it is
really,
gracious. I'll give you that.
I think, yeah.
So Eli,
I'd rather landscape it.
yeah, were you arguing for 3 feet to 4 feet?
I'm arguing to keep the current standard of 3 foot if you're serving just up to 4 units. And then I'm saying if you're more than 4 units, I'm saying instead of having to jump to 5, you could jump to 4.
Right.
That was my original
That's
proposal.
what I thought, which I'd support.
So why don't we take a show of hands on number 1?
A quick question
Oh, yes,
before we do
sorry.
that. So is the 5 foot standard adjustable or is it fixed?
It's adjustable, I believe.
So if Eli can go in and make the case that a 4 foot path serves the need adequately and gets more grass, then he can try and make that case, right?
Correct.
Less impervious surface.
But it is a land use procedure. It's an adjustment to the zoning code standards.
Certainly doesn't have to be concrete, by the way, guys. Do you have that requirement as to what the material is on the pathways?
I believe it could be pavers. Has to be hard surfaced, so it can't be bark chips, for example. Had to be hard surfaced, or it can't be gravel either.
Okay. Okay. Show of hands for number 1. I'll go there. 2, that's not going. Show of hands for, what do you want to throw out here, Eli?
Okay, I guess my option for 2 is.
I don't know that anybody's really, well, let's just do 2. Is anybody supporting 2 real quick? No. Oh, yes, Katie.
I kind of like.
So number 2. So a
as an
gradient
optimized,
version.
yep.
So show of hands for number 2 then. 3, 4, 5. There you go. That's a majority. We can move on.
All right, thank you. One more. This is related to ground floor windows for ground floor commercial uses. The proposal is currently requiring 25% window coverage for ground floor commercial uses in the multi-dwelling zones. After discussions with BDS staff, we're proposing a change to that so that when ground floor commercial uses are closer than 5 feet from the streets, up right near the sidewalk, bumping it up to a 40% minimum ground floor window coverage requirement. That brings consistency with what we have in the mixed-use zones. 25% is what applies in the mixed-use zones on secondary street frontages. Just wanted to provide a little bit of information about the intent of these different window coverages. Typically, 40% is applied on the primary corridors. It's intended to promote storefront commercial patterns for fairly high amount of window coverage. The original intent of 25% was to provide maybe a lesser amount of window coverage. There's less of a storefront commercial aspect to the residential zones, provide more flexibility for a range of live-work type arrangements that don't necessarily have a large storefront window arrangement. Some examples of the smaller amount of window coverage relate to a lot of things you traditionally had in residential areas where you have townhouse type development that, say, was converted or built as more of a live-work type arrangement, not really the full-fledged storefront window coverage. So part of the idea with that, at least especially allowing 25% if you're more than 5 feet or at least 5 feet from the sidewalk, is it allows that flexibility for a range of live-work type approaches. The 40% requirement, it does have precedence in what's been built even in the RH zone along Martin Luther King Boulevard, where you had ground floor commercial, and then in Northwest on Lovejoy, where both situations that are RH zoning with commercial built right up to the sidewalk, they do have a lot of glazing. So this would be consistent with this idea of if you build right by the sidewalk, expectation is that you build to more of a storefront commercial window coverage arrangement. But the idea is you would allow a lesser coverage for buildings that are set back further from the sidewalk. So that's it with options. And so this comes from staff. But have the option of keeping it where it is, just keeping just a 25% window coverage requirement for ground floor commercial. But our preferred proposal is to shift it so that if you're building right up by the sidewalk within 5 feet, it becomes a 40% ground floor window coverage requirement, but providing flexibility for situations further set back to continue more of that residential character with a smaller window coverage requirement.
Comments, questions? Teresa's hands up.
So, to the architects in the room, if you were building for commercial use, would you not put windows in there just for building functionality?
I think the struggle somewhat comes down to on those, let's say like an apartment building, is we're putting bike rooms and we're putting, when you have limited frontage, we start struggling with all the requirements of utilities and lobbies, which lobbies could have a lot of glass, but you're also trying to make it seems like something unique. And like I said, the bike room. So there's kind of a mail room. That's another one that kind of, you're trying to get all that into that ground floor. So it starts competing for window coverage.
So if your primary usage is going to be for people living, then you want to be able to use those spaces for people optimized things. And then if you're building for commercial, though, if that's your intent is to rent it for commercial or whatever, use it as storefront, then you're going to put windows in there. So I guess my argument would be, wouldn't the functionality of the building be a better dictator of what the window coverage needs to be?
Yes, it just means that, so for instance, it just means that you could get a building very close to the street, which is I think what staff's worried about, that has very few windows in it. And, throughout our code, we've been trying to encourage architects and developers to, one of the things is by having that window requirement, it encourages you to maybe put retail there or uses that are a little bit more pedestrian friendly versus all these things that I just kind of maybe laid out that aren't that sexy. And I guess loading's another one, if you're going to try to have an area to be able to load furniture up into an apartment building. So you're trying to encourage people to not do that on your front facade and find some other creative solution to it. So honestly, I guess I would support 2 because it kind of sticks with continuity of our other code, and yet it gives you kind of a break for that situation where it's maybe just all residential and you don't want quite as much window. Ben?
Question, live work would be considered commercial?
We don't have a strict zoning code, a definition for live work, but there are situations where people with, let's say, an attached house have a ground floor commercial space. It would be counted as commercial at any rate, especially when they build to the building code, and it's more of a assigned design for people to come in on a walk-in basis. But yeah, a part of what we heard in some of the community discussion was this interest in allowing people, especially in these busy corridors, to have small commercial uses in conjunction with residential uses. And part of the idea of allowing a lesser window coverage requirement if you're set back further is to, in a way, provide flexibility for some of those arrangements where you don't always want a really big storefront window in front of what's a somewhat more residentially oriented building.
So, Bill, real quick question, because now I'm rereading this after talking or answering Teresa's question. If I'm reading this, I can have 25% window coverage if I'm just residential and I'm 5 feet from the street.
The window coverage requirements the ground floor window coverage requirements only apply to the walls of commercial uses where we're allowing them in the multi-dwelling zones. We don't have window coverage requirements for residential units at the ground level.
Then I guess I kind of support what Teresa was trying to say. So I'm sorry, Teresa. I mean, let the market dictate if they need big windows for a commercial use or not. I mean, that commercial use could be an accountant, and it's not very exciting to, maybe watch what they're doing all day. I don't know, right?
I agree. I think, especially, going back to the possibility of live work, more and more people work from home. I think having even that flexibility seems to make sense in a situation where, yeah, it's commercial, but not quite.
But I guess staff had me convinced because this only chips if you're within 5 feet of the line. So it's more of a.
It's only commercial 5 feet of the line. So I guess if I was kind of thinking what you're proposing was if you're in 5 feet of the line, you just need 40% window coverage.
No.
And then I'm like, okay, that kind of seems like following some of the other code that we've been doing. But I think you're trying to dictate use tied to commercial to window coverage.
In this case, one of the things that allows you to build up to the sidewalk is doing ground floor commercial.
Oh.
So it's tied
so
to that
if
allowance.
you're earning your way to be a zero setback, then one of your way of earning it for commercial is to glaze it like commercial. You can still do a house.
Just say it's 40% ground floor windows, and the only way you're getting 40% ground floor windows is the fact that you're earning commercial, correct?
Yes, if the standard, say RM2, RM3 thing is a 5-foot setback, as we discussed, doing ground floor commercial is one of the things that allows you to go right up to the sidewalk. And this would link that allowance to go right up to the sidewalk with doing greater window coverage.
One of the other ways you can go right up to the sidewalk is a courtyard-shaped building.
But that would not apply. It only apply to commercial.
You wouldn't be able
uses.
to use this. So I guess if you say that every building opposed to the setback has windows,
then courtyard building that
Would
has
also
zero
have to have
setback
it,
would have to have 40%
which would be
coverage.
kind of
Yeah,
weird.
that is
This
weird.
would only apply to ground floor
So
commercial
now
uses.
I get the commercial clarification. Thank you, Eli. That's helpful.
I'm thinking about this too, and because I saw when we went through this in the when we were talking about in the earlier meetings, it was kind of a different kind of commercial. So I'm wondering, does this get away from that, Bill? The commercial looked kind of like a tailor or a, it was very family oriented and kind of, like maybe you'd get your shoes fixed there or something. Yes, this is a really good picture to show the difference.
Yeah, this image was showing on the right, you have a little bit of a setback, somewhat smaller windows. This is actually up closer, and you're
Right.
doing more of a storefront window coverage requirement. And the option we are supporting is if you do choose to build right up to the sidewalk, we would provide the same storefront window coverage requirements we have in mixed use zones. But if you're set back 5 feet or more, then it's a lesser amount. It's 25%, and that does accommodate a greater variety of more residentially focused live work arrangements.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think that's okay. Um, yeah. It just it was a little bit different than we'd originally looked at, but I'm not seeing anything that bothers me too much.
Okay, so if we could see our choices again. I think I'm hearing support for staff's proposal, which is item 2, increase window coverage requirements to 40% for ground floor commercial uses closer to than 5 feet from the street. Hands up if you support that. You've got 8. That passes.
All right, that's it. Just to remind you, our next session is December 11th. A focus of that discussion will be on reconciling some of the standards as they vary between BHD and RIP. And the number one, probably the biggest particular topic is regulations related to front garages and parking for like duplexes, attached houses, row houses. So that's the main item. And then there are some carryover items that where staff is directed to do some additional work from previous sessions, and we would be bringing that back to you. So a little bit of a tying up loose ends, both related to the overlap with RIP, as well as past items from BHD.
Thank you
then
very
after
much.
that, it's we're not getting together until April for the final reconciliation.
Well, we'll miss you in the interim, Bill. Thank you very much. With that, we're adjourned.
Thank you.